What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Talk Sports with Jake. Hope all doing well. So let's get started. NFC West off-season grades. It is time to do the NFC West now. Been going division by division. Of course, I am almost done. NFC West off-season grades. Let's get into it. We're going to start with the Los Angeles Rams, who, of course, won the division last year. I gave the Rams a B plus for their offseason. They did a good job keeping a lot of the band together. They kept a couple of pieces I thought they might lose, like Alaric Jackson, who had a really good year last year playing left tackle for them. You re-sign him for 3 years. You keep Coleman Shelton, who played off the line for them last year, and Keller Weatherspoon. You add Puna Ford up front on the defensive line. He's a really good run stuffer up the middle. Been around the league for a while. I was in Seattle for a while. Was recently with the Chargers. He's on Devontae Adams. You do look out Cooper Kupp, but to me, Adams is a very similar player to Kupp. I mean, not in terms of play style, but the role he's going to play is basically the same. You know, the guy who was once one of the two or three best receivers in the league isn't quite that anymore, but is still very good. And, can take some pressure and take the dumpings away from Puka Nakua, be a good mentor, still be a very good, solid receiver, a really good number two receiver. He's also basically, he's going to play some 10 more games, a healthier version of Cooper Kupp. You signed him for 2 years. I thought that was a really good signing by the Rams. He's still a really good receiver. He played really well for the Jets last year, actually. Just that, obviously, it was such a dysfunctional situation. It kind of got buried under all the horribleness from the Jets last year. But he played well. He had a good season. Is he going to have, 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns anymore? No, but he's still a very good receiver. In terms of PC, you lose. You trade away Joe and Jackson, who was one of your starting guards last year. Other than that, you didn't really lose a whole lot besides Cooper Kupp, who you let go, who Devontae Adams, you replaced him with Devontae Adams. I'd argue that's honestly an upgrade. In the draft, I don't think you even had a first round pick. Maybe they trade back, but you take Terrence Ferguson in the middle round. This is a deep tight end class. I like that pick. You take a running back, Jarquez Hunter. Don't know much about him, but we see really good running backs get taken late in drafts every single year. I like Chris Paul Jr., the linebacker that you take. So they had a pretty decent draft considering they didn't have a lot of draft picks. And overall, they did a decent job. I thought they could have made beat up the off the line a little bit. Also, like that they agreed to a restructured deal with Matthew Stafford, decided to keep him in town. But I thought they could maybe taken a fly on one of these quarterbacks. However, this class is pretty soft. You have Stafford, I would think, through next year. So you can always take one next year when the class is better. They overall did a good job and put themselves in position to possibly win the division again. Seattle Seahawks, they get a B. It was a lot of moving parts to them. They were on my top five most interesting teams, as I did last week. I'm interested to see what the offense looks like. So you do lose a lot. You did lose a lot of guys. Obviously, Trevor DK Metcalf, who's a very good receiver. You let go of Tyler Lockett, who had been there a long time. Trevor Geno Smith for starting quarterback. You lose Laken Thompson on the offensive line. You lose Ray Robinson Harris and Jermon Jones on the defensive line. However, you bring in Sam Darnold, who if he continues to get better or does what he does again last year, he's a slight upgrade over Geno Smith. I think he's a lot younger. They're making around the same this year, and then over the next 2 years, because the extension that Geno got from the Raiders, so he'll be making a little bit less. I do like the overall addition of Cooper Kupp. I think they overpaid him at 3 years for $45 million, but when healthy, he's still a very good second receiver to me. And much more kind of games they'll have more. Even if they have him for 13 games, I think he could still be very efficient. You take the double teams away from Jackson Smith, Njigba, who had a great finish to last year. Very good young receiver, first round pick a couple of years ago. DeMarcus Lawrence was a good signing. Very good pass rusher, comes over after a long tenure in Dallas. You reunite with Ernest Jones at linebacker. You re-sign Jaron Reeves as a very good defensive tackle. And overall, I had a really good draft. You take Gray Zabel in the first round. He's probably going to play guard. It was a major need for them. Can also play tackle. I like Nick Emmanwori in the second round. I think he'll be a good safety. You take a flyer on Elijah Arroyo, who I think could be a good tight end. Even Jalen Miller, who I don't think is very good. I don't think there's a whole lot there. However, he really can basically sit behind Sam Darnold for at least 2 years and truly learn. Maybe they catch like lightning in the bottle. He's in a pretty good situation. So I actually think it was worth. Although he probably was a fifth round pick, he took him a third round, so maybe a slight reach. It's not a bad fit by any means. It's actually a good fit for Jalen Miller for what it's worth. So I think they did a good job. I felt they could have continued to add a little bit more to the offensive line. That was a major problem last year. And And overall, this is still a young team that ceiling isn't probably much higher than it was last year when they were 9-8 and just just barely sneaking into the playoffs. In fact, they might have just came up a little short. But so I don't know if they got any better or they didn't get any worse. So they get the B for me. A lot of moving parts on my team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Arizona Cardinals to me get a B. So I do like the Josh Sweat sign. You give him a lot of money, but pass rush has been a major need for them for a while, and he is a really good player. Had a great year last year. Was great in the postseason. You had Dalvin Thompson up the middle, Baron Browning off the edge as well. So you beef up the D-line a little bit. I think you had a very good draft. Walter Nolan, who is dealing with injury right now, but camp's just starting. I'm sure he'll be fine. I think a very good defensive tackle. Will Johnson, surprised he fell as far as he did in the draft. Get him mid to late second round. I think he'll be a very good corner. So those two guys, I think, will be an impact. So you do add to that defense, which is what they need to do. However, I'm not sure if Darius Robinson, your first round pick last year, is the guy. And if he's not, I still think that pass rush could have used a little bit more. I think they could have used another receiver to take the pressure off Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, I think they're being held down by mediocre quarterback. You've watched the show before. You know how I feel about Kyler Murray. I think he's very mediocre. I think he's overrated as heck. So overall, like they made a couple nice moves. Didn't really lose anybody, at least nobody major. And you do add, like I said, you add Josh Sweat, a premier pass rusher. You had a good draft. You add a couple of pieces on defense. So the free agency draft, I think, could help you this year down the line. But I thought they could have done more. You're in a division that's winnable. Like the best team in the division to me is still the Rams. I think the Lions are still a little bit handicapped with like financially and injuries. I'll get to them right after this. So I think the Rams are still that team that you're chasing. And the Rams are a good team, but they're not like so overpowered where you're never going to catch them. You were what, 3 or 4 games behind them last year? Finished what, 3 games behind them? It's not impossible to make up, 3 games on them this year. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Rams are simply a better football team than you, but that could have possibly changed if you were a little more aggressive, maybe went out and brought in another receiver rather than a pass catching option or two. Continue to add to the defense. I thought they should have, even though they did make a couple of nice moves. So they get a B from me. It's like they did some decent things, not but I thought they could have done a little more. The Flares, they're the last time I'm going to cover. They get a D from me. I just know what they did. They just lost a lot. Okay. Uh, didn't really add anybody. You were in a huge cap crunch. I guess you get fullback Kyle Juszczyk back on a. You basically get him on a pay cut after you cut him and then re-signed him. But like other than that, you trade away Deebo Samuel, who's getting older. Not sure what he has left, but was the second best healthy receiver you have right now. You lose 2 pieces of an already hampered offensive line and Aaron Banks at guard and Jalen Moore at tackle. You lose when healthy 2 All-Pros on defense and Tawana Hufanga at safety and Dre Green at linebacker. I know Hufanga last 2 years had a lot of injuries. Reno only played a few games last year, coming off the torn Achilles from the Super Bowl the year prior. But when those 2 guys are healthy, they are all pros. Learned Floyd 9 sacks last year. You let go of him. Hargrave is a really good D tackle who you let go of. Tavarius Ward, obviously he's had a lot of personal problems, but when he's on the field, great defensive back. You lose him. True Jordan Mason, who I probably would have kept because of all the injury issues with Christian McCaffrey. Only played about 3 games last year. You don't really get much back for him. In the draft, I like Mike Williams. Maybe a slight reach, but I do think he's a good player. The rest of the draft just okay. This was honestly a rough off season for them, and I think they're looking at another potential season where their age and injury issues might catch up to them and possibly cost them a playoff spot. So overall, it was a rough off season for the San Francisco 49ers. All right, so a few more things I want to discuss. But first of all, I had something kind of comical, and it was very odd. Some news that broke yesterday, and I'm gonna use this graphic to show you what I'm talking about first. A 30-year-old sophomore? What? What are we doing here? The University of Arkansas has a 30-year-old sophomore football player, Monte Harrison. He's a wide receiver on the team. He's 30 years old. What are you doing? Huh? Like, What? Like, I respect the grind, I guess, but how are you only a sophomore? In today's era of NIL and the transfer portal with college football and college sports, we're gonna have some, older 20-year-olds. I mean, Stetson Bennett was 25 years old when he finished at Georgia. That kid at Miami was like 29, the tight end, Cam McCormick. At least, doesn't make it that much better, but at least they were like, graduate transfers. This dude's a 30-year-old sophomore in college. How is that even possible? Like, what'd you have? A COVID year? An injury year? Like, what? Did you have 7 torn ACLs in a row or something? What? Unless he, like, went back to college at 28 years old or something. Like, did he drop out after his freshman year? He went back, like, last year at 29 years old. Like, you realize, oh, finally at 29, oh, yeah, my life's in the gutter. Maybe I should try and go get my degree. I'm sorry, dude, but you're 30 years old. Get a J-O-B, buddy. 30-year-old sophomore. What are we doing? Okay, if I were to do that, I'd be the biggest loser bum ever. This guy does it stunning and brave. What a joke. But moving on. So small news, don't know any details yet, but Justin Fields just did suffer a dislocated toe in training camp today. I don't know what else to say. The Jets are cursed. They suck. They just can't catch a break. Really? I don't know what to say anymore. I've ranted enough about the Jets for a lifetime. They don't even deserve my attention. I hope he's okay. He could be back in a week. He could be back in 2 months. Um, which would in 2 months from now would be like the 4th week of the season at that point. I just can't. He feels like that true needs reps because he's with a new team. He didn't play a lot last year, and now he's probably going to miss most of camp at least. Just a disaster situation, and just I can't anymore with this team. They're never going to prosper at least as long as Woody owns the team. I know Woody has nothing to do with this, but I can't. I can't. And some sad news before we finish up this podcast of something else. Hulk Hogan passed away earlier today. He was 71 years of age. He had cardiac arrest in his home in Florida. Obviously, personal issue with Hulk Hogan. A lot of people have personal issues with him, but the wrestler was one of the all-time greats. Absolute icon. He's a legend. He was the main reason, for the most part, that wrestling is mainstream today. There is no WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan. His feuds with Andre the Giant 35, 40 years back were iconic. He was really the first wrestler to truly go into movies and truly get into acting. And without him, I don't think guys like Bautista and The Rock and John Cena will be able to do that. And so he really paved the way for that. Obviously him turning heel and joining the NWO all those years ago is one of the most iconic moments in the history of professional wrestling. One of the greatest heel turn ever. So that was very shocking. People who grew up in the 80s and 90s loved that guy. They immortalized him. He truly was the immortal one, and just rest in peace to a legend, a wrestling legend, Hulk Hogan. To finish off today, this last segment is going to be the top 5 quarterbacks I believe under the most pressure to perform this season. It could be a variety of different reasons why. I'm going to get into and explain why I think these guys are the top 5. Let's go. So first off, at 5, I'm going to go with CJ Stroud. So this might seem a little bit premature, and let me start with this. I like Stroud a lot. I loved him coming out. I said he's better than Bryce when he was coming out. I've proven right on that, at least thus far. He's still only going to be 24 next year, only his third year in the league. This might seem very unfair for a guy who had maybe the greatest rookie year ever from a rookie quarterback 2 years ago. Maybe second to Jane Daniels this past year. But you look at his numbers overall, 63% of his passes, 4-3 tutties, 17 picks, 2 playoff wins. Doesn't get a lot better than that. He did take a step back this year. Still 60% of his passes, but went from 4,100 yards plus to a little over 3,700 yards. From 23 touchdowns to 20 touchdowns. Went from 5 interceptions to 12 interceptions. Yards per game went from league 273, almost 274, to just 219. His quarterback rating went from 100, almost 101, to 87. Went from one of the league's best to that league average. His QBR went from 57.5, which is decently above average, to 49.8, which is slightly below average. A lot of that is because the offensive line got a lot worse. The team dealt with injuries. That being said, he's second overall pick. He is extension eligible next year. Quarterback contracts are out of control in today's NFL. Technically in a position where if he just has like an okay year, maybe like in between his, all pro rookie year and his kind of Menza second season, they're still going to be forced to pay that guy $250 million, which he wouldn't have earned at that point. I mean, a rookie to come and win offensive rookie of the year, win a playoff game back-to-back years, it's not that it doesn't get much better than that. However, he did regress last year. If it happens again, regardless of what goes on with the offensive line and the other pieces around him, now people are going to start thinking, could that first year have been an anomaly? Could teams have just simply figured him out? So I'm not saying that's right. In fact, it almost sounds ridiculous even saying it out loud, but that's the narrative I think that's going to come out if Stroud does not take a pretty big step forward in year 3. Okay, because on paper, that line I still don't think is very good. I don't think it's that much better, especially trading away Laramie Tunsil, which I thought was kind of silly. However, you do have Nico Collins, who's an all-pro. You bring in Christian Kirk. You drafted Jaden Higgins to start off the second round. You have Dalton Schultz. You have Joe Mixon. He has the weapons there, as long as they're healthy. And that defense is very good. D'Amico Ryan's a really good coach. I like Bobby Slowick as a corner. How the offense did regress last year. Supposedly he clashed with Stroud. He's gone. So maybe it ends up being a good thing. But I do think that if he has another not so great year like he did last year, regardless if a lot of it's on him or not, then the narrative will be that first year might be an anomaly. They can't pay him right now. Much if the bust label would come out quite yet, but he'd be a year like next year he would be number 1 on the list if that were to happen. So I have him at 5 for now. There was a bunch of quarterbacks that probably should be under more pressure, guys like Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott, because of their contract statuses. Even if they had a bad year, that their teams can't physically cut them, and I don't think anybody would trade for them. Hypothetically, the Texans couldn't move off this route. They wouldn't because that's stupid. But so that's my reasoning why he's at 5 over guys like Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott, that he is miles better than in a completely different tier than in my opinion. Number 4 is Caleb Williams. You know how I feel about him? Look, he was not good as a rookie. I don't care what the stats say. His rookie year, he completed 62% of his passes for 3,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 16 receptions. Keep in mind, he did not throw the ball very much. He held on to the ball way too long. A lot of those sacks, he gave up the most sacks. Were on him. His quarterback rating and QB were about average to below average. He did not play well last year. I don't think he can cut it at this level. Now, but he already had a good team last year. Now, any O-line issues that you thought they had, they shored up. Okay, so that's not an excuse anymore. All right, the play calling and coaching was bad. All right, fine. They went and got Ben Johnson to be the head coach. He was the offensive coordinator. The Detroit Lions, one of the best offenses in the league ever since he got there. As a coordinator, he's one of the best play callers in all of football. That is no longer an excuse you can make anymore. Yes, Keenan Allen's not there, but you still have DJ Moore, who's a former All player. You still have Roma Dunze, who's a top 10 pick last year, who he wanted, who Caleb wanted, and is a very talented receiver. You have Cole Kmet. You draft a Colson Lovin on another good tight end in the first round. The defense is very good. It got even better in the offseason. There is no more excuses. Caleb has to take a step forward. He's only going to be 24 next year, only his second year in the league. But if he can't, even be, have the Bears being competitive in the NFC wildcards, even in a really tough NFC North, and play well with this roster, I don't see how he's ever going to be successful. So he's at 4. Number 3, I have Anthony Richardson. Through 2 years, he's been really bad. He has completed just over 50% of his passes, which is historically bad, for just over 2,300 yards, 11 touchdowns, I think it's 13 interceptions. His quarterback rating is 67.8, which is absolutely terrible. His QBR is like 45, 47, which is not very good either. He's only played 15 games. I get it. Only went through 23. I get it. They haven't developed him properly to an extent. I get it. He should have sat at first. Not all on him, but still. This guy's tapping out of games. He's historically inaccurate. Hell, they brought in Daniel Jones to start all right. I'll tell you, no, you're bad. Just if he doesn't figure it out this year, and also he's got some nice pieces here. The offensive line is good. Jonathan Taylor is a dog at running back. Michael Pittman's a good receiver. Josh Downs is very good. I like him a lot. Now, the draft Tyler Warner, who I think will be a great tight end. But defense is a little bit better. So I get the people in that building need to do a better job. But again, he was the fourth overall pick. It's year three. If he doesn't show you anything like he like the first 2 years, the boss label's gonna come out, and the Colts guys start looking themselves in the mirror and be like, maybe we go in another direction. I mean, if there's another 6, 7 1 year, they might have to look at, obviously, fortunately, their own long-term owner, Jim Irsay, just passed away. His kids are now controlling the team. If they want to take us in another direction, maybe time for a new regime just to kind of start fresh altogether. So we're definitely under a lot of pressure. Number two, this might shock people. It's Aaron Rodgers. Look, I'm not going to sit here and argue that Aaron Rodgers is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the 10 or so best quarterbacks to play the game of football. I'm not going to argue that, even as a Jet fan, even seeing how bad he was with the Jets and everything we had to deal with. I'm not going to sit there and argue. But for a guy that talks about himself the way he does, he forced his way out of Green Bay to the Jets. 4 plays in his first year, tears his Achilles, comes back next year, looks like a shell of himself. The team is horrible. They win 5 games. They were willing to pay him almost $50 million to play for somebody else. He drags out this thing to Steelers all the way up until about training camp. Finally signs a 1-year deal at 41 years old. Announces this is probably his last season. And in his last season at 41, if he goes out and puts up another dud, especially if the Steelers go under 500 for the first time in almost 20 years, his legacy, which is already, I think, taking a little bit of a hit, is going to take a really big hit. If he goes out there and plays a little bit better, and the Steelers can maybe win a playoff game, all right, then that might restore some of his legacy, even if he still has only the one Super Bowl. Either way, you can't take away this is one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen. But if he goes out there and just is the again, and the Steelers go 8-9, or hell, maybe they go 9-8, miss the playoffs. Rodgers is going to remember as a guy who was just kind of a dickhead and a control freak, and just couldn't get it done besides that one Super Bowl. It's not really that fair, but that's the way he's going to be remembered. So he is under some pressure to really go out there and finish his career off on a high note. Number 1 to me is Bryce Young. First overall pick 2 years ago. His rookie year, he was absolutely brutal. 2 years ago, his rookie year, completed just 59% of his passes for just over 2,800 yards, 11 touchdowns, like 10 receptions. His QB rating was 73.7, which is terrible. His QBR is 33.4, which is beyond horrible. Last year, gets off to a dreadful start. He ends up getting benched. Gets put back in there and did look a lot better, but overall, completed only 69 or 61% of his passes, 2,400 yards in 14 games, including 12 starts, 15 touchdowns against 9 interceptions. QBR was 54.1, which is about just above average. His quarterback rating was 82.2, which is just below average. So a little bit better. Overall, only 6-22 in his career. Has completed to 60% of his passes for 5,200 plus yards, 26 touchdowns against 19 interceptions. A quarterback rating of 77.3. Not good enough for a first overall pick. He's only going to be 24. That being said, year 2 of Dave Canales. The benching thing is out of the way. He's got a really good running game. Chuba Hubbard is still there, obviously. They bring in Rico Dowdle. He'll obviously replace Jonathan Brooks full time, so he'll have a full time replacement for Jonathan Brooks. Now, for a fact he'll have 2 legit running backs in that backfield all season. And then you draft Ted McMillan, so you got what should be a number 1 receiver in that room. The offensive line got a lot better last year. I'm not sure how good the defense is going to be, but nothing else. He'll be able to do his part. So if he goes out there and is and just isn't cutting it once again, that bust label is going to come out, and now Carolina might look like, first of all, we can't pay this guy $200+ million, and second of all, are we sure this is the guy to take us to the next level? And if not, we have to bring in some competition or just move on altogether. So for that reason, I think he's under a lot of pressure to really take a true step forward in year 3 and prove that he was worth the first overall pick, because at this point, overall, he is nothing for the first overall pick. That's all I got for you guys today. Till next time, so long. Have a great day.